to order the Town of Rome Joint Community Development Authority and Plan Commission Subcommittee meeting for Tuesday, December 13th. It's 2:30 p.m. in the Rome Town Hall. And we'll do a roll call and we'll start with Mike.
Baker here.
Capel.
Schirmelhorn.
Also present are Town Attorney Nick Flanagan and Zoning Administrator Emily Zeddies. We have a certification of the posting, please.
The agenda for the joint CDA and Plan Subcommittee meeting was posted at the following locations on December 9th, 2022. Rome Municipal Building at 1:20 p.m. Quick Trip at 1:42 p.m. Nakusa Port Edward State Bank at 1:47 p.m. It was emailed to the Wisconsin Daily Tribune on December 8th at 3:41 and emailed to the town website on December 8th at 3:38.
Approval of the agenda for today.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Citizen comments, we didn't receive any comment cards prior to the meeting, so we'll dispense with that one. And go to no action contemplated except for possible referral to a future agenda. Number 6, informational updates, recent correspondence, current events, and announcements. Does anyone have anything to share?
No.
Discussion and possible action on the following items. Number 7, discussion and possible action on the meeting minutes from the November 8th, 2022 meeting.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, approved. Item number 8 is discussion and possible action review of map number 8, existing land use, and map number 9, future land use. I believe Emily's got some great maps again for us today, and we'll have her walk us through.
So I provided everyone with the newly updated map showing our discussion from last month. So the north section of the map is same as last month. I got rid of all of the, I guess, speckled areas where like residential wasn't commercial. And then we move further down, and then, so all of Sand Valley is now reflected as outdoor rec as well as Derek Hughes. And that rural residential on the north, or the south side of Lake Camelot, below the residential, mark that as rural residential. And then that purple section, is on the Plan Commission agenda for tonight. It is that mix with residential, forestry, and preservation. And I think we're gonna focus most of our attention in that southeastern section of the map for today.
That doesn't have a hash mark or a color of some sort already.
Yes. And we didn't really discuss the purple section, but that's just that's the entire purple section is owned by one person, or right currently the city of Adams.
It's right. Yeah.
Besides focusing in that section, do we feel good about the other hash marks and that matches the conversation that we've had at prior meetings?
I think she's pretty much spot on with everything that she's got designated the way it is. I think that reflects pretty much all the discussions that we've had in the past.
I concur.
And I guess for that last corner, I see a big chunk of, just using those numbers on the blocks, 33, 34, and 35, I see big chunks of that as staying outdoor rec.
It's currently preservation.
Yeah, can we keep some preservation?
So all of that dark green right there is like wetland area. So that's I think why it was designated as that preservation land, cause it's wetlands and, well,
Non-buildable.
yeah, mostly non-buildable land.
Swamp.
I think keeping that as preservation is probably, well, that'd be my opinion. Keeping it as preservation, keeping some of our land as protected.
I think the way that land is right now, I don't think it's really developable, you know, being that it's so, like Bill said, so swampy down there that I don't know what else you could use it for.
Yeah, and so currently the purple section is zoned as conservation or conservancy district, for zoning, and that's like the truly preservation on both like non-developable, for our comp plan and zoning. The rest of it surrounding that purple is all pretty much rural residential and some forestry mixed in.
There's a lot of rural
Forestry and
residential.
outdoor rec, to clarify, the zoning district, not, yeah, tons of rural, residents. So very likely houses are big.
Is it worth just keeping that map the same and reflecting the same preservation and forestry in that entire area? I mean, you still have your speckles of rural residential that are in there, that if, I'm sure there's homes on those sites that they got rezoned to
Yeah.
construct.
I'm thinking correct there. I'm comfortable with it saying preservation and forestry throughout there. I have a hard time justifying changing that.
Is there anything in preservation that, prohibits the installation of recreational trails of any sort?
It's just a comp plan, so it doesn't prohibit or
Right.
permit anything.
Yeah.
So if it was zoning, that's where the conservancy district, that would, prohibit a home site paving. I don't know if it's paving specifically, but like any development beyond that surrounding, like the management of natural resources.
What about our little section then too, that would be west of State Highway 13?
So currently along Highway 13, in that section 32, it is zoned business, B1.
Yep.
Is that the area where that bread and breakfast is? Is that the one that's down there, or is that on Aspen?
Nope, that's
That's-
further up on Archer.
Yeah, that's by the lakes, the Pines Golf Course,
It would,
or is that separate?
separate, it would be just above Regal Forest right there on the corner of State Highway 13 and
Well, whatever golf course that is in Lake Arrowhead.
Lake Air, but that one would be on, oh,
No,
that'd be
I'm
Pines.
saying it's near it.
It's near
It's
Pines.
it's that business one near that golf course.
That's where the one has a sign out by Highway 13?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah, cause they have a section of commercial property that's for sale there on the corner. But I could see on 32 encompassing that section that's commercial, unless that's too far down and we don't want commercial there, but trying to stay more around that Rome Town Center area.
And just looking at the back side of that, it looks like the current zoning is rural residential on the back side of that chunk, on the section 31
Yep.
part of that. There's a little bit of ag there. Interestingly, in that one one chunk, and then forestry.
Yep,
Yeah,
forest
is,
and outdoor rec.
is the other parts.
I don't know what that one little block of commercial is in there. It just seems like a weird red dot in there.
I say that because I don't know if you want to, kind of make that another transitional part, with some rural residential, maybe leading into then the outdoor recreation that you have, in that big block of Sand Valley.
I don't know if any of the, maybe Dan knows, are there any trails that run through that area down there in section 31? That would be in conjunction with all the ones that they're developing now south of Badger?
No, I don't know about connection points, but obviously road route, that's all I know of right there.
I don't think there's connections there yet. There maybe could be in the future, but I don't think yet.
Do we know if those, parcels that are marked agriculture to the east side of 13th Avenue, are those actually being farmed, or is just land that's designated agriculture?
I'm not aware of them being farmed. Outside of food plots, I'm not aware of them being farmed.
I was gonna say outside of food plots or trees.
Well, I think the next idea might be worth looking at as far as making that a rural residential in those, that quarter of 31 and kind of the half of 32.
That would be consistent with that chunk that is now filled in as rural residential, up off 13 to the east there, north of where we're looking at, so that was where it came from.
You get what you're talking about?
Down here?
Yeah.
So
Uh.
maintaining east of State Highway 13, the preservation and forestry. And west of State Highway 13, rural residential.
Mm-hmm.
All west or just half that 32 and west?
Yeah, because do you want the commercial that we have zoned along 32?
Yeah, so we're gonna stay consistent with the commercial and the zoning, and then commercial and the comp.
That would be a question, if you wanted commercial there. Cause there is commercial in 32 in our zoning, just along State Highway 13. That would be reflected on both sides of 32, both sides of State Highway 13, there's a commercial there.
I think commercial would be a good idea because it's cause it's so close to Highway 13 there.
All right, say that again, what you're proposing for the west side of Highway 13 in section 32?
Not necessarily proposing, just, and on our zoning map, those two sides of State Highway 13 and 32
Trees
are
there.
commercial, are zone commercial.
No
And would we
trees there
want
right
to
now.
reflect that in future land use maps
No,
that that would be
they're not.
commercial, or would we wanna reflect that more as
I mean, it's so close to
forestry or
13,
rural residential?
Probably better commercial than,
And where it's gonna come into play is if somebody wants to rezone, right? So if your future land use map has commercial and somebody, for example, wanted to rezone that to rural residential or some kind of residential, then it would need an update to the comp plan. So I think it's just a larger conversation. It's not that we have to have it because of the zoning, but, you know, from a planning perspective, is this an area where if somebody's looking at where our plan is for commercial development, this is a really good map to supplement our current zoning map, because if the current options aren't real good ones, then somebody might look at where they might propose rezoning that's consistent with our plan. If that makes sense.
so are you saying if somebody wants to rezone it, if we mark it commercial, if somebody wants to rezone it to, rural residential, it works vice versa also, doesn't it? If it's rural residential and they wanna rezone it to commercial, it would work both ways, correct?
That's correct. So you kind of have to look at what it's currently zoned, right? And if you see that as appropriate, then you reflect that, I think, on a future land use map. If you see that area as desirable for rural residential or denser residential or something else, then you can reflect that. It doesn't change the zoning, current zoning, but just like you said, if somebody has to, you know, proposes to change it, whichever way that is, if it's inconsistent with the future land use map, it's gonna require a comp plan amendment.
My only thought is if you wanna combine and not condense, but have that stronger commercial area, this, you know, separates it out. Which isn't a bad thing, but just another consideration, like, do you wanna, so you are encouraging development within one area, or do you want that to be more spread out in those areas? You might also have things that are complementary to the development that is happening down there, that they might wanna be more adjacent to them too.
On the current zoning map then, in section 31, no, it'd be 32, just to the west of that long strip of commercial property, there's is that an agriculture property or is that a rural residential property I'm looking at? Ag. And then and then just to the west of that quarter of the next section, 31, what is that on the zoning map?
Rural residential.
So that already is designated rural residential.
Yes.
So I think it makes a lot of sense to update, as you had discussed, the future land use map in that section of 31 and half of 32 at least, where the rural residential makes a lot of sense. Then the question is, do you want to reflect residential, commercial, forestry, or what along 13 in your planning document is really what it comes down to.
when you look at how the properties are split up already, I'd be inclined to mark it as commercial. for the portions adjacent to 13 anyway.
Are we all comfortable with that?
Keeping it the way it is now on the current land use for business and then rezoning the balance of it as rural residential? Is that what you're saying, Dan, or are you saying all commercial?
No, more in line with what your thought is.
Okay, so west of where it's currently business, we would keep the business district there,
Yeah.
and then to the west of that, we would go rural residential.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on board with that. I think
I'm on
that's what
board with
you're
that
saying.
also, because and I'm not taking Sand Valley into consideration, but if people that can't afford $1 million homes in the area of Sand Valley, you know, might be nice to build outside of it. I don't know. I'm not planning on doing it.
Is that where you're
But-
putting a little shack?
So I agree with Dan.
Well, okay, then that would be all sections of the map that we've gone through. Emily can put those hash marks on there, and then she'll give it to North Central Regional Planning, who will make the new land use map. I would say at the next meeting, then, we would view that new land use, just make sure that we're all in agreement. And then we'd have to go forward with, if we wanted to adopt it, we'd have to go forward with the public hearing process.
Well,
We'd have
nope,
to make
so
a
you'd
referral,
be
right?
making a recommendation, just like we're gonna do with
Yeah.
that ordinance today.
We'd have to make a recommendation to planning.
You recommend it to the plan commission, and then we'll go through the process that the plan commission receives that recommendation, reviews it, sends it for public hearing, if they're agreeable to it, and then considers adoption.
Are we okay with that process?
Yeah.
Okay. Took a little bit, but it looks nice. Then we will go forward with item number 9, which is discussion on possible action. Referral of any recommended zoning amendments to plan commission. Letter A, discussion and possible referral to a future agenda. Review potential draft language for zoning district requirements regarding cannabis.
Okay, so we had a rather large discussion at the last meeting regarding our proposed ordinance language for canopies and other types of accessory structures. We reviewed language, and then I had asked for this to be on this agenda, because I then wanted to take what our discussion was last meeting, and if you can recall from, I'd say 2 or 3 months ago, we had reviewed district-specific regulations related to accessory structures. What I've done is I've now consolidated both of those, and I had to make certain updates to that language, and I wanna go through that with you, specifically in the district sections, to show where I've made those updates. If it looks all acceptable to you, then we'd be looking for a recommendation of this to Plan Commission, so then Plan Commission can consider the recommended changes. So where I'm looking first is going to be what's marked as Article 6. It starts with R1. And again, you'll recall that what we had done is gone through a lot of the residential districts and the Lake District, and reviewed the accessory structure language, as well as the impervious surface language, and made updates there. Where I've done updates now to the language, since you've seen it last, is in 2 sections. First off, if we just look at the R1 section, under C1, where you see the wording for accessory structures including, the language had canopies in there before, because we had language allowing canopies in certain situations. Since we've now proposed a restriction on canopies that is stricter, I think, than what we had before, I had to remove that from the proposed language. So that's one change that I did, was you see that wording, accessory structures including detached garages, canopies was in that wording. I've now removed canopies. The second area of edit is going to be not in R1, because it's only going to be found in a couple different districts. So the first one it'll show up in your packet is gonna be R2. If you flip to R2, you're going to see on the second page under number 5. Under number 5, you'll see some new language in there. What that's doing is, so in our district sections, where we have references to sheds, in some sections, we had references to sheds on how you measure heights, in that you measure it from the finished floor. In other sections, we did not have that language of how, where you start to measure the height of that from. All we're doing there is making the language consistent with the other districts. So the wording is consistent across the board. We had that language in some of our districts. It was not in other districts for where you measure it from. That's all we're doing with that language, is just making it consistent across the different districts.
That's what you've done with all the changes, correct? We've made everything consistent.
Yes, we have, but that's why you see that new wording in there. It's not because we're making that up from somewhere, it's that it's in some of our districts that you have to measure it from the finished floor. And in other districts, it just wasn't there. We just wanted to make sure that it was clear in every district where we're measuring the height from. Those are the only edits that I've made to those district-specific regulations since you saw them last, like 2 or 3 months ago. But I wanted you to be able to see all of those to get all of this stuff together, because they definitely are interrelated. So both of our, I would call it segmented discussions, are now in one document today for your review. So we can certainly discuss any questions or any further edits you want to make. Otherwise, I think we'd be looking for a recommendation to move it to Plan Commission.
Emily, could you just walk us through, it's helpful for me if you go through a scenario. So, I have a vacant lot. I am in Lake District. I have a 10 by 15 shed on it. I come to you because I wanna build what I'm gonna call pergola.
Okay,
You have no house, no structure?
I have no house,
it's a vacant lot. So,
but I wanna hang lights in my pergola for when I'm there camping in summer.
you said you're in Lake District?
I'm in Lake District.
Can't do it,
Can you expect me to read that?
So
can't do it.
I'll help too. So
Okay.
first you would, I think where you'd start here would be general regulations, because we have a section that references certain items that are permitted in non-agricultural zoning districts prior to a principal structure. And so gazebos exceeding a certain size in feet, and pergolas. So if somebody came and asked for a pergola, I think by that provision it would be allowed.
It would be,
It would be allowed?
Yeah,
no,
'cause two
if
accessory
there's one
structures.
shed already on there,
I have one shed, I have one 10 by 15 shed. But I could have 2 accessory structures.
Oh, not permitted, so the
Not-
answer is.
I didn't think it was permitted. If
It
there's,
would
I
not
thought you
be
could only have one structure when you don't have a residence,
Yeah,
and the
so
shed would be the structure.
That's the section where you get it from, but
So-
it's not permitted.
If it was a gazebo, 150 square feet or less, you can have that on your property in addition to a shed.
Yep, it'll count towards the number of accessory structures, but she's already said that all they have so far is a shed, so
And a shed would not count as an accessory structure.
not counted.
Because it's it's separate.
Yes.
But that's the section that it
So
would,
it falls under section B?
B is where the justification would come
Okay.
from.
Yep.
Because we're not at risk with the number, in this case, it's whether it can be constructed before the principal structure. And by that provision, pergolas cannot be, before the principal structure. You got another one?
Yeah, I don't, this is helpful, I think, but if others disagree, we don't have to. So, I am in R2. I have a, home on the lot, I have a mobile home on the lot. I have a accessory garage that substantially matches my home, so I have a detached garage,
Nice ad.
yes. And I would now like to do what I will call gazebo that I can also enclose if I would like to enclose it. It'll be open in the summer, but closed in the winter.
That's not a gazebo.
Be a canvas or closed with walls?
Plastic.
Plastic.
You're talking about the
Plexiglass.
walls, right? Not the,
You would include
Like
so we're talking about,
not a hard structure wall, but a
canvas.
A canvas.
Canvas or like flimsy plastic.
Yes.
So
Just so when I store things in there, they don't get snow and it'll help block the wind.
no. So if we go under canopy, our definition, roof, a freestanding structure with a roof supported by collapsible columns or posts embedded in the ground and usually used as a shelter, as a picnic table or for outdoor furniture. A canopy may have unenclosed sides or its sides may be covered by an opaque, translucent, transparent fabric of natural or synthetic material. Canopies are not permitted.
So again, though, where it's gonna come in is, because I think that was a good scenario, this person's coming in and saying, well, that sounds great, except it's a gazebo.
Not by our definition.
And so you need to review the definition, yep. So it isn't what they're calling it, it's what our definition has. And I think our definition does state it needs to be open air.
So if I don't put sides on it, can I build it?
Can you show me what it is?
Right.
Does it have collapsible nature? Is it collapsible in nature? I want you to reply. We weren't done with our scenario yet.
Yeah, and I think it's also going to be something that we'd review on that permit application to make sure we're not at odds with the impervious surface, depending on what size the
Right.
lot is.
Right, the 20%,
Right, but it sounds like there's already a garage on there
right.
along with the home.
Yep, and I'd be R2, so maybe I have a slightly bigger lot, but yeah. So I'm in Lake District, I am within 1,000 feet of water. I went to Sam's Club and got the cutest canopy. And it has a hard roof and then, just those, sheets, just those, that for walls that you pin back, right? And I'm going to put it behind my house, which is in 1,000 feet of shoreline, and I'm not gonna take it down in the winter because it's more sturdy than that, and that would be too much. Cause it has a hard roof.
It has a hard roof and is it collapsible in nature? Or does it have like metal, is it a metal frame that's not, or collapsible in nature is our main point.
No, it's not, it wouldn't be easy to take down. You have to, it's a kit, it all comes
Nuts and
together, but,
bolts.
yeah. You'd have to assemble it and.
Did you say you had a house
I do have a house on the,
and any other structures?
I don't have another shed, but I am gonna put this against the waterfront, or towards the waterfront. So we can sit out there and enjoy the scenery.
Then this would be permitted, but you need a Adams County permit as well.
that's where I think this is just hilarious. Like, who the hell in any highly populated area pays attention to anything like that?
What do you mean?
That you need to go to Adams County to get a permit to put up a gazebo that you bought at Sam's Club for $3,000. I mean, this
I'm not
is
sure
all.
they're paying $3,000.
Well, she said she bought a nice.
Yeah, I get what you mean. That's why there's tons of these
Practical
everywhere.
application.
Nobody
is-
thinks they need a permit for it.
So, really, we're trying to have something in place to handle the complaints ultimately.
Well, yeah, I mean, so part of the complication to your point is that Adams County has regulations within the shoreline, right? I mean, it's better or worse, that's the issue that comes in, right? I mean, so, yeah, it's frustrating, but they have their regulations. We're not gonna be able to regulate around that, or out of that.
No, but be consistent.
We can be consistent with it, which is what Emily's doing when she's saying that.
But then they will need a zoning permit from us, yeah.
Mhm.
So if they need a zoning permit from the county and from us, ours is $100, theirs is $100.
But to Dan's point, so yes, there's an enforcement piece of this, because that's what we're likely gonna catch it before Adams County does, I'm guessing. We're gonna catch it during the permit process, and if we see that, then Emily's going to refer them to Adams County. So there is some enforcement pieces in there that we're assisting with, I think.
So is there going to be a pergola, gazebo, carport, whatever pamphlet when this is all said and done?
An informational document sounds like it'd be a very good idea.
I don't know if it'd be a pamphlet, maybe just a one-sheeter that would have a picture and need a permit, don't need a permit, that we could.
Mhm.
And we could put that with all of our new home packets, cause I think that would be probably helpful to property owners.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it is.
Because these types of things are so easily available commercially, it's very easy for someone to just go buy one and put it up and not know any different.
Which is what everybody does right now. They're not gonna think to ask. But then they're gonna get a letter in the mail and be like, oh my god, I didn't know.
Another one though is a fence permit. I don't know in a lot of minutes, we have that $100 fence permit, and I think when we implemented that, a lot of people were, they didn't know, but it caught on fast. Now we get more questions about, do I need a fence permit, than people going forward and putting up the fence.
We also require anybody that wants to put a play structure up to come to plan commission for a review. I think that's interesting.
Not as interesting as the story of how we got there.
Yep, it's a good one.
Is there anything stated that once they build the fence, they have?
But no one asked for a permit for those either.
That's
Yeah, again, some people do, but some,
There's nothing in writing. that
most
they have to
don't.
do.
I don't know, you'd have to ask them.
What's the question, Sharon?
The question is, just talking about the fences, you need a permit to put a fence up, but is there any wording on maintaining it to a certain standard?
So I don't have the fence language in front of me, I can certainly pull it up.
Oh,
I know we, just to give a bit of a recap of, the last maybe 5 years or so, I know the Plan Commission did a pretty large review and overhaul of the fence, provisions of our ordinance. I want to say that we address some of the maintenance pieces in the ordinance.
Okay, just asking.
We can do a reference to it, I'm pretty sure we did.
Fences shall be kept and maintained in good, sound, and presentable condition at all times. Fences not so maintained that become an eyesore or otherwise adversely affect property values in the neighborhood shall be removed upon order of zoning administrator.
And we spent quite a bit of time with Plan Commission going through those fence, regulations.
It's a personal agenda item, as you can tell. Sorry, but, no. Okay, thank you.
Along with this canopy.
We're actually hoping in the new year, we're working with a company called Hago that will integrate with our website, and so we'll have a link right on our homepage that you would click, and if you had an issue like that, you could just fill out a simple form. If you want, you could attach a picture, but it would require an address, and then you could just submit it, and it would come right to Emily.
And when is this going to happen?
We're hoping after the first of the year.
Oh, okay.
We're working through one final aspect
Okay.
before it can happen.
I get complaint forms in the mail weekly.
You can always
So
do a
there's-
complete-
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any
How will
other-
you notify the public of this service or this?
We would do a series of informational pieces on the website and likely social media,
Okay,
Channel 300.
okay.
Yeah, I said, we have one more payment piece we have to work out before we can move to it. But we're hopeful. Anything else on the wording? Questions, comments, concerns?
I'm ready to say forward it to the plan commission.
Would you like to make a motion to that?
I will make a motion that we forward the changed language to the plan commission for adoption.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll get it forward to the plan commission for their January meeting. Okay. So then we would be to dates and items for future agendas. Next agenda items.
Can I ask a question on that? Because
No, Nick, no, you
well,
can't.
so some may have the same question. So we've now moved through this ordinance. We are likely going to see a final version of the future land use map. Are we then going to move towards a review of the zoning ordinance, or what was the plan then for the next step for this committee now that that we've done this zoning ordinance provision and the comp plan piece?
Disband.
Well, and that's an option, I guess, so that's why I asked the question. It's really a larger question, I think, for this subcommittee as well. Because I think it goes back to the intent of this subcommittee. It was largely to review the comp plan pieces. It was an opportune time also to look at the zoning ordinance section, but we are at a point now where either we transition to something more, or this is the point where we say, this subcommittee's done the work that we've been asked to do.
And you'd still be involved in that approval process through the respective committees, and as residents, but I could see, so there are a couple other items on plan commission that have been at the end of the agenda that we've wanted to work on, which are roof pitch, signs, the sign ordinance, and canopies and then conditional uses.
Yeah.
So those might be some other potentials that that the subcommittee could work on.
Well, we've done canopies. The plan commission has a couple options for signs, and I think, looking at the agenda, I think we probably can get to that tonight. So I don't know that they need to send that to the subcommittee necessarily. Roof pitch, I guess, would be an option, and, you had one other one, I think. Conditional use permit,
Yeah.
you said? I mean, we went through and adjusted our conditional use permit ordinance pretty significantly after Act 67, so I don't think we're necessarily doing that. You're talking about more related to short-term rentals, right?
Short-term rental licensing procedure.
Yeah, so you're really talking about short-term rentals, not necessarily the conditional use permit procedure, because I think we have a pretty solid conditional use permit procedure after Act 67.
Yeah, not disagreeing.
Yeah, because really, there's not a lot of discussion has to take place with the way everything has been updated and all the information that Emily puts into the findings of fact. I mean, those go pretty quick, not like they used to. I don't know how much more, unless they're looking at taking the review of short-term rental conditional use permits and taking away from the planning commission and giving it to somebody else or some other entity to approve. But
So if all of the information, I just need a reminder, have we added additional conditions besides our occupancy and vehicles and such?
I don't remember,
Property manager.
yeah.
And property manager, but those three are on every single one.
Property manager, the hard surfaces, we use that specific language. I don't think it's specifically in the ordinance. But I guess back to our original discussion, I mean, the question is, would there be value in having a subcommittee, this subcommittee, talk about short-term rentals? Or is that, I mean, it's on the,
Bill has feelings.
it's on the planning commission.
If, when I signed on, the next step would be review the code, and I don't wanna bring anything else on besides that. If you don't wanna review the code, then I think the subcommittee's done. That's my opinion. I don't want other additional items added.
And I think a review of the code, we could talk about what's the best way to break it down, cause it's a healthy document. But we could spend a meeting or two and just say, are there items that we think need work?
So when you say review the code, that's the zoning ordinance, which is,
Healthy.
yeah, over 100 pages, I'm sure, if you printed it out.
Oh boy.
And when you say review the code,
No.
when you say review the code, I just wanna know a little bit more clarity. Are we talking about the zoning districts and the permitted and conditional uses? Are we talking about start from the top and work our way down? Or, because
Was my
my
impression.
role as well is going to be, I think, to look at those sections and make recommendations, I guess, as well. But I think the plan commission, you know, is gonna see that and, you know, wanna know
Why
where.
the plan commission doing
Right,
it?
Well-
because it's really the plan
Yeah.
commission's role.
It would have been changes to the code that are subjected to the future land use zoning changes that we're recommending. Those would be the code changes that I think this subcommittee should be looking at. Beyond that, back to the plan commission.
So that does.
It's their
narrow-
purview.
It potentially narrows it a little bit. It narrows it to the zoning districts, I think is what I'm hearing. But then, I mean, another question would be, so if we're looking at a zoning district and we're saying, let's look at permitted and conditional uses, do you feel like that is related to what we've been doing? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I know.
Not saying it is or isn't.
I don't know the answer to that question, Nick. I'm not into it that deep that I could tell you. Maybe somebody on the plan commission would have an idea better than I would. Because I see once the maps are being established, then it's up to the plan commission to enforce the maps. And that's where your conditional uses come in, correct? They would be the ones that should be looking at if they're gonna wanna make changes to the conditional uses, not this subcommittee. Cause they're the regulatory body for this, once it's enacted. Not this subcommittee.
Then maybe kind of a segue question to the plan commission members. From our meetings, do you feel like there was anything that we discussed at plan commission that would be appropriate to have this subcommittee discuss versus have on the plan? I know we talked about, I'll give an easy one. Talked about short-term rentals. Probably wouldn't be here because I think the plan commission clearly talked about just taking that on during the winter months when things slow down. A discussion about that. Were there other things that you recall that plan commission had talked about that would be helpful to have a first vetting here, and then recommend it up to the plan commission, or if not, then I guess we could ask the plan commission.
Since it has loosely to do with CDA activities, the signs and billboards thing that we keep kicking down the road. And I
You're saying-
only suggest that because you often have the opportunity to interface with business owners, potential business owners. I'm not saying it belongs here or not, just
What is it?
bring up a suggestion. There's a review of the sign and billboard ordinance that's been on the agenda for plan commission and not addressed.
Yeah,
Well,
so
we got-
there's been a desire to look at the sign ordinance specifically in the zoning ordinance, those sign code provisions, and kind of dig into that, because there are some inconsistencies. Now, we are, on tonight's agenda, talking about, specifically Gateway District sign regulations and maybe some options to resolve some inconsistencies there.
In Northtown Center.
With Rome Town Center, yeah. I mean, there was always a kind of a cross-reference back to Rome Town Center, but I think specifically the confusion is in Gateway. But there's also been some discussion at Plan Commission, you're right, that we look at the sign code, and I agree. I mean, there's certainly tie-in with CDA and their interaction with businesses, and maybe hearing some of that feedback, there could be some value in having the subcommittee take a look at that.
could be contingent, sort of how the conversation would proceed this evening.
Yeah, cause he did just get a lot of feedback.
So I guess the jump point for this would be, is this subcommittee okay with that if that were, if that were something that the plan commission said, yeah, we'd like the subcommittee to give us a recommendation on, review it and give us a recommendation, would the subcommittee be okay with reviewing the sign code, probably very similar to how we did the canopy, and accessory structure discussion? Take a look at it, go through and see where we wanna make some updates, maybe run through some scenarios, and just clean up largely the inconsistencies, I think, is where we wanna, because that's where the heartburn's been coming from, is where code references point to a different area and cause some conflict with otherwise, I think, what the intent of it was.
Are we staying consistent with the nature in which this subcommittee was established?
Well, that's where I was going from the very beginning, which was, what is our understanding of why the subcommittee was established? It certainly was comp plan, clearly was comp plan. I think there was a component as well to look at the zoning code. That's why I had asked for those accessory structure discussions to happen here, because I knew that we had full agendas at plan commission. I wanted to see those conversations able to take place. Beyond that, I mean, I don't think we're inconsistent because it's zoning code. I think it somewhat depends on how the plan commission feels as far as, if they wanna have that discussion at the plan commission, then that's fine.
I'm just thinking that if there was more of a clear purpose as to continuing it, then perhaps this iteration of it gets disbanded and it gets reestablished, and maybe there's members that have a greater interest in whatever we delegate to a subcommittee.
Sure.
I think everybody that's here kinda wanted to participate in this aspect.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Which is, how we did the sign last time, we had people that had strong interest in signage, right?
Mhm.
They felt they had prior professional experience with it, interest, it was more
Sign
interesting to them.
experts.
Sign experience.
It was, yeah. There were some that
Yeah,
had,
there was.
with their careers, had experience with signs and lent their expertise to some of the provisions that we have. Yeah, you're right. It's a good point, is maybe there's an interest in working through some of those specific provisions that, not say, nothing personal, but maybe you didn't have coming into it. Maybe you were very interested in looking at the comp plan and the future land use map and those, but maybe less of an interest in going through our sign code and talking about all that sign
Very
stuff.
much less interest, Nick.
How many members do you have on that CDA?
7.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Pass it around.
either way, we have to have one more meeting for the comp
Right,
plan, future
right.
land use map.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, it's worth just kind of having this conversation at this point to get what everybody's thoughts are. We'll have at least one item on the agenda next time, and then we can kind of wrap up and talk about this after. Likely both of your bodies will also have an opportunity to meet. Maybe you bring it up there just to see what their thoughts are as well.
Yep.
Cause I think there are other people on CDA too that might have interest in certain pieces. It's just making sure that we're just always closing that communication loop if someone wants to jump in on one of those items. We have other business owners on CDA too that I think would have interest in some of them because they do have businesses here in town, and how would that influence what they have currently or what they're doing or what
Yeah.
they're thinking of doing in the
Right.
future. Okay. Good plan. So our next meeting date and time would be January 10th at 2:30. Would that still work into everyone's schedules?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. Then we'll see you back in January, and we would call the meeting adjourned at 3:25 p.m.